You talk about European Western Christianity, and I guess Christianity has gone to many cultures, including African cultures. But there's this new term that has come up in South Africa. Let me say in South Africa, I don't know about other countries, decolonizing Christianity. What does that mean to you? Because there's an assumption that the Christianity we have is a colonial Western, like you mentioned. But what does it mean to be an African Christian? You said Seventh-day Adventist, which I am also. How do you become a Seventh-day Adventist who's an African, an authentic African?
That's a very powerful concept on its own, because the packaging of the gospel, and even some of the issues that we are highlighting right now in terms of the gospel, the doctrines, and etc. In some cases, they are totally naive. In some cases, totally ignorant about the audience in which they are going to. This Christianity comes, it does not respect local food, does not respect local music, does not respect local clothing, does not respect local family structures and cultural family structures of respect and etc. Has no regard of the land, does not respect social shrines that are there, places of worship, has no idea or clue of the environment and weather patterns and etc. It just comes and says, you are now going to become Christians. Leave everything that you're doing. Take off your shoes, take off your clothes, take off your this, jump into this, talk like this, sing like this. Almost to an extent that the African must first of all be detoxed. You're in a medical space, you understand what I'm saying? You have to detox the African first from himself. He must become half Euro before God can begin to address him. If you hit a drum right now, boom, God jumps through the window and disappears. But when you put on organs and other, he comes back inside. And I say, if God is foreign to the African, then he's an idol. So he created even the Africans also. So the decolonization of Christianity basically has to look at the whole structure of Christianity. We are not going to be tolerating white pictures of Jesus as emblems of Christianity. If you say it does not matter what color Jesus is, then it even does not matter if he is black or white. So remove even the white. But you cannot say it does not matter, but let's
only
keep,
because
no, but let's keep the white one. So the whole issue of how does Jesus leave Africa, North Africa, and goes to Europe, and he comes back with blue eyes, blonde hair, and etc. It's a problem. The fact that during the divine service are being told, no, no more choruses. It's now we're in the divine service now. Let's do the hymns. You know that kind of, we've been there, Chief. And you listen, and slowly you're almost saying, what is local cannot approach God. Or we can only begin to address God when he is singing like this. So the decolonization is doing the Africa. Maybe 60% of what we call Christianity are practices that have made us to be acceptable to our colonial masters. So in one sentence, religion was actually an evangelist for colonialism.
But let's go back to the Bible. I always prefer to use the Bible as a reference point. This topic of decolonization of the Christian faith was the first controversy that got all the apostles to come together and discuss. How do we teach this gospel
to the Gentiles,
to the heathens? Maybe you can talk to us because you're a theologian, and maybe let's pull it from there and say, how does that first discussion by the first, we call it the first general conference, apply to us today? Because they had to decolonize, if I can use that word, their Hebraic faith to custom make it to the Gentile nations.
You use very beautiful language, custom make. Without even, before I can even get into the discussion itself, does our modern Christianity, did the Europeans customize the religion or the Christianity when they came to Africa? No, they did not customize it. They actually brought it as is. And we were just told to fit in there. But again, Paul says the best statement which you can find anywhere. He says, I am the Jew.
To the Jews.
To the Jews. And I'm a Roman.
To the Romans.
To the Romans. If you was to come to Africa, you say, I'm an African. To the Africans. And of all the pictures I've loved, I hope in your interview you can cut that picture where the General Conference president came to Nigeria and they actually dressed him up like a Nigerian. Now for me, that statement on its own says, had we started off here, that when we're approaching people, don't scorn, don't downplay their culture, and you uphold a jacket and a tie, polished shoes, When you're looking like a semi-white man, then no, God will accept you in that form. And I think we have a form of godliness. But we're denying the power of the gospel. For the gospel has nothing to do with the clothes.
Allow me to take the license I have as a host and talking to the people out there. I have had this very nagging question of saying most African countries, this is in the political space, they went to liberation wars to fight against the colonial system of rulership. But when we got the independence, we retained most of the systems of governance of those colonialists. How does that change for the African religious or even political leaders who are out there who may be leading our countries? Because we changed the leadership, but the systems remain foreign.
Can you believe that we are still being run by the Roman Dutch law? Do I look like a Roman? Do I look like a Dutchman? Because when before...
You sure don't look like one.
I wish I looked like one, but for the purposes of... But you look at the arrogance of colonialism, the arrogance of Christianity, that you totally disregard the indigenous knowledge base that you find in a place. Africa did not have prisons. Africa did not have hospitals. Africa did not have this and that. And don't tell me that when colonialists came here, they found us dying under trees. You know, so they came to resuscitate. They found vibrant communities that had art, that had clothes, that were dancing and celebrating, that had life. There's a time when our bushes were our pharmacists, pharmaceutical companies. There's a time when our rivers spoke to us. There's a time when our mountains were places of summoning God to send the water on us and rain and you walk into a space and you ignore all that. Now we have a bunch of African Christians who call themselves Christians, who call themselves political leaders, who neither have access to God or access to the money of the colonialist that they're talking about. They are literally custodians of a pot of oppression that has been given to them. And with that in mind, you tend to find that we have all actually have a frustrated African governments that until, again, we come back to indigenous knowledge. And incorporate indigenous knowledge. I was saying to Professor Nkanyane the other day that we needed to take democracy and circumcise it with a local knife. We needed to baptize this monster called democracy and include a little bit of cultural, include a bit of social. Because what is a Christian who can no longer recognize his father? And if you say you are a demon, if your forefather is a demon, then what are you?
You're a son of a demon.
No, all of a sudden, all of us are supposed to be focusing on white ancestors as access to God. With all respect, of course, God of Abraham, God of Jacob, God of what? But if why not call God of my father? Because for me to be here, and if God was angry with him in the past, he would have killed him. So God has a purpose for me. So if we can call on God of David, who butchered his army general for his wife and then married and what, and our Savior Jesus is born
out of that lineage.
On the genealogy of Jesus.
And I'm told it's
Rahab
one of the most...
the prostitute, chief prostitute is put. Bathsheba is put. David is put. And all these people. And people look back at the African culture and says, I cannot mention my forefather. Because my forefather was an ancestral worship. I am not saying worship him. I'm saying preserve the knowledge of your past. When you pray to God and say, the God who has blessed the Jalambris, the God of when the nations, whatever happened, where God preserved us, and I'm here today.
Absolutely.
Representing that tribe. And when God looks at you, he does not see you only now. He sees where you're coming from.
Absolutely.
He sees where you're going. And I think for African theologians and politicians, we ignore knowledge in pursuit of materialistic, capitalistic ideologies, and we're abusing our own people.
So you're talking about an indigenous Christian faith, which is authentically African and does not negate some of the good African practices that we've always had, which are in line with the biblical principles.
Which, for me, if you look at Ubuntu, Chama cha Mapinduzi, Ujamaa, Sankofa, the critical fibers of African being, they are purely Christian. If you are walking through a field and you're hungry, you don't need to come to my house to ask for food. Go in the field, break a watermelon, eat, as long as you don't carry some along the way, but eat and walk away. If we're eating Wapano, even if I know it's not enough food, please, come, let's share. You'd rather refuse. giving someone water.
Yeah.
You know, cutting trees, for example, sacred spaces. In as much as people might be scared too much of making these things altogether satanic and say, no, they're demons and etc. But these were the same principles of conservation. Now we're talking conservation because it's now being written by a blue paper and the white man is talking, let's conserve Africa.
Yeah.
Let's not put dirty water into the sea.
Yeah.
But an African knew that you don't contaminate. You don't pee in a pool where you are drinking. You don't walk at night. You don't clean things like this because those elements in themselves, in as much as, unfortunately, they were interpreted by people who did not understand them. But I think in my old age now, when I go back into my African archive to look at these norms and cultures, I actually find that I would rather, this is honesty, I would rather deal with an African, thoroughly bred African human being.
All right.
Who understands himself and his environment than deal with an arrogant Christian who knows Jesus and does not know anything else. I would rather know Jesus and him crucified. I don't care about anything else. And you look and say, you don't care about anything else, then why do you go to work? And which Jesus will take you so far away from everybody else and then he does not make you look after your own brother.